Hey ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. As always, it is Nick here, back with your daily crypto news and analysis. And today, we have a lot to talk about. As we really look at what's going on around the world and around this entire asset class, things are changing in a very large way. Now, the other day, I made a video and I actually included this post in that video where I was addressing how the SEC going after all of these players in the space, it's probably in your best interest to focus on the ones that they are going after and question why. Now, for the longest time, we've talked about it, right? Oh, Ripple and XRP, they were targeted because they were doing this and that. They were going after the big banks. They were, whatever the case may be, right? And although that's a very easy way to look at it, like, oh yeah, Ripple and XRP, they just got targeted because they were doing a good job at, really kind of cutting out the middleman. That's a very easy thing to say, but I don't believe that that is the case. And in this video, we're going to be talking about it, right? We're going to be addressing it. This post from the other day basically outlines what's going on right now. We have these major attacks on this industry. We have a major pushback from pro bankers. And although, yeah, there is a lot of protecting happening around the Wall Street players and big banks, I also think that it goes, a step further. And that step further is making sure that there's as many people out as possible. And what do I mean by that? I don't think that they want you holding specific projects. And I've said this in the past. You have these big players in this space like, Bitcoin and Ethereum, and they get pushed heavily all the time. Just recently, I made a video about XRP where, I was talking about how XRP is never named. Or if XRP is named, they don't give you much specifics at all. Larry Fink, Brad Garlinghouse, they got asked about an XRP ETF, basically zero answer. As we look at Bitcoin and Ethereum, it's like, oh yeah, we're launching a Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF. And everyone's like, oh, that's crazy, that's crazy. But what about XRP? Like, XRP is never in the conversation. It's almost hidden from, public eye. And you question why. It's the same exact reason why I believe XRP was targeted. It was to make people lose, hope, lose faith, and ultimately just turn a blind eye to XRP. Even now, price action wise, right? Everyone's turning a blind eye to it. Even though it is still up in question around institutional sales and an SEC lawsuit, and the sentiment around XRP is the worst historically it's ever been. And the reason for that is because they want you out. I've talked about this on multiple occasions. You can't afford to not be a part of this Discord. You need to join the free Discord down in the description below, as well as in the comments below right now, to get ahead of the rest of the market with 24/7, 365 access to information around crypto, including insights, trades, altcoin gems, you name it. You need to be a part of this Discord. So what are you waiting for? Click the link down in the description below, as well as in the comments below, to join today. Now, outside of this post, I bring it up because I saw this post over here from Coach JV, and we have XRP and Ripple were a threat to the failing financial system. The 5 things that made them a threat: 1, speed of transactions. 2, solves liquidity. 3, cost reduction. 4, interoperability. 5, enhanced security and transparency. When you think of the banking system today, all 5 factors above make them a clear solve. XRP, the future of the financial system. Now, I do think that XRP and Ripple are definitely a threat to the traditional system. It is cutting out a lot of the middlemen that are eating off of the system. They're basically leeches when it comes to, making payments, sending payments, receiving payments, especially for, those that come here from, third world countries and want to actually make a living and send money back home to their families. Every dollar counts. If you're in the States, you don't really see, too much of a problem paying a fee or anything. But when we're talking about a couple dollars or $10 or $20 to receive a transaction overseas, and it could be more, right? It cuts into how much they are receiving. And that could be, food for a day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5. It's a very big problem. But those middlemen are the ones that are making it so expensive. But also, you have to remember, there's a lot of money being trapped and tied up. But the big thing is those middlemen, because they don't want to get, money taken off the table. But that's exactly what a lot of these projects like Ripple and XRP are doing. But outside of this, right? What is Ripple really doing around regulations? Is the SEC getting backed up into a corner? Is the SEC about to get, this whole, story twisted on them? Meaning, is the once bright and promising regulator now going to be painted as the villain? And in my opinion, I do believe that the SEC is starting to really kind of turn into that. And I think that now media is starting to also address it. But over here we have Forbes. Team Ripple is putting a stake in the ground. Big shout out to XRP Drops for this. We have the victory certainly contributed momentum to the effort to pass Fit 21. Ripple is one of the top funders of Fair Shake Pack. Team Ripple is putting a stake in the ground. And we have the victory certainly contributed momentum to the effort to pass Fit 21. And it burnished Garlinghouse's heroic profile among a grassroots army of crypto supporters who have mobilized not only to fight the SEC, but to influence the 2024 elections. And as we really look at a few things, right? Number one, when it comes to Ripple and their focus on clarity, their focus on innovation, pushing this industry forward, especially within the US, you really have to give them a +1. But what if I told you that they've been a part of this since day one? What if I told you that the regulations that we are getting today have been tied to Ripple? That's right. Here is the big secret behind Ripple and regulations. Let's go back to 2017. Digital Asset Investor posted this, and I spent 11 days in the White House. There were 2 Federal Reserve representatives, and they were presenting a white paper on the potential digitization of the US dollar. This was July of 2017. And we have down here, did you see the video they deleted from their YouTube account years ago? And this is from Bank XRP. It was about the digital dollar. It was a full breakdown of the digital dollar that they fully deleted. There's also a few other connections back to Ripple as well. We're going to go more in depth to this, but listen closely to this video.
And I said, yeah, I'm an institutional investor. I don't really get it. And, seems ridiculous. And then I went to the White House. And I spent 11 days in the White House. And this happened on a Wednesday. And the reason I know it was a Wednesday, I was only there for one Wednesday. So I know it was a Wednesday. And I was in the Roosevelt Room, which is off the Oval Office. And there were 2 Fed representatives. And they were presenting a white paper on the potential digitization of the US dollar. You can go back. This was July of 2017, and I walked into the meeting and they were explaining what they wanted to do. And of course, it didn't happen, but I said, wait a minute, this the blockchain? I said, the blockchain. And these 2 young men were owners of Bitcoin and they believed in the blockchain. And I remember saying to myself, okay, I've got to understand this better. The Winklevosses are probably right. I'm obviously dense. I went back to my office. I wrote down some notes. About 4 days later, I got fired. About 5 days after that, I bought the URL skybridgebitcoin.com. And then I got very frightened because I was like, okay, it's probably not the right thing to do. I've got all these institutional investors. So I made a list. I said 3 things have to happen for me to buy my first Bitcoin. And number 1, Bitcoin has to get to or close to 100 million wallets, because therefore there would be a network effect and it would have an exponential expansion. Second thing I had to get comfortable with was regulation. I had to believe that the United States wouldn't ban Bitcoin or do something nefarious to Bitcoin. And so if you really study US property law, once the IRS said that Bitcoin was intangible property, I knew we were fine. I knew that there would be no way that a regulator, a czarist regulator, like a Gary Gensler could block something like this. Just the court system in the US, the common law system would protect you. And then the third thing is I had to get comfortable with where to custody if I was going to buy 9 figures worth of Bitcoin. And so when all of that materialized in November of 2020, we started buying Bitcoin. I don't know, it was probably 17, 18, 19,000.
So regardless, right, as we really look at this, the whole idea is how long they have been planning a digital dollar for. It has been in the works for a very, very long time. And the significance of July of 2017 is, remember who was in office. It was Donald Trump. Why is this important? Well, check this out. Here we have, back in 2019, it got updated on January 31st, 2020. Big shout out to Chad Steingraber. We have, again, the regulations of today go back to Ripple. Everything today is because of Ripple. Listen, this big win, all of it is cemented by Ripple. Fit21, cemented by Ripple. Ripple is one of the top funders of the Fair Shake PAC. They are going to be donating $25 million per year to that as well. And outside of that, we have Ripple spends $170,000 on Trump's staff to shape crypto regulation in the US in 2019. They have been a part of this since day one. The regulatory path forward is forged by Ripple. We know Ripple is commenting on all of the major regulatory frameworks around crypto. Go back to the FSB, instructed by the G20, the IMF, and the BIS. Remember, Gary Gensler is on the board of the FSB, and they were letting Ripple comment on regulatory frameworks back in December of 2022. We're talking about months before XRP even got cleared as a currency and not a security. And they were able to comment on regulatory frameworks globally. Does that make sense to you? It doesn't make any sense to me. Why would a company in the middle of a big lawsuit, one of the largest you could argue, be allowed to comment on global regulatory frameworks around the space? And then you go back and you connect the dots and it's like, all right, well, now it makes sense. This is just one big show. It's a one big show to shake as many people out as possible. Outside of this, right, we continue to see major moves being made around Ripple. Okay, let's talk about it. Over here we have, from Subjective Views, Nellie Liang, United States under Secretary of the Treasury for Domestic Finance, hitting all of my keywords in 1 minute, 29 seconds. Blockchain adoption, banks using DLTs to improve internal processes, crypto legislation, FedNow, RTGS, instant settlement, digital assets, CBDCs. This is Nellie Liang, United States Undersecretary of the Treasury for Domestic Finance, talking openly about this. Listen closely to this.
What is the scope for banks in all of this? And you know, it's a area of significant uncertainty because it is relatively nascent. What do you believe to be the potential scope for the institutions that are inside this very traditional and very rigorous parameter?
Yeah. So I think there's the technology that could be adopted by banks for certainly for their internal use, right? And we know of examples where banks are using distributed ledger technology, blockchain-based kind of technology to improve their internal systems. I could imagine that banks could offer stablecoins or some version of like deposits that are like stablecoins. So I think the goal of any legislation would be to allow both banks and non-banks to offer, or new non-banks, payment kind of entities to offer this service. I think as you're thinking about this, though, you want to be thinking along the lines of what's happening to FedNow. How will FedNow, which will be real-time gross settlement, instantaneous settlement as well, how will that work alongside of this other technology? And maybe you want two technologies. Maybe having some redundancy in our payment system could be beneficial. So I think there's plenty. I think banks are active. They're looking very closely. They're also thinking about just not private digital assets, but the potential for central bank digital currency. I think they play an active role, will continue.
Now, why is this important? Well, she's talking about banks using DLT to improve internal processes. She's even talking about FedNow, right? FedNow and how it works alongside DLT. All right, so let's take a second to look at this and address this. So on the topic of the FedNow service, we have this from RizXRP. The Federal Reserve FedNow partnership with Ripple is more than just testing the beta version of its transaction network. Ripple's Interledger protocol is a core part of the FedNow's system, providing much of the technology infrastructure for its transaction system. IOP allows the network to use XRP, a cryptocurrency, for secure, transparent, and near instantaneous cross-border transactions. The Fed also assessed XRP's capability during research before FedNow's launch. This is crazy. Now, remember, this is from AI Overview, so it's an AI breakdown of the connections between the Federal Reserve with FedNow and Ripple. But we do know that Ripple and XRP have a direct integration on FedNow through names like Volante, for an example. They could be directly tied into this. Remember that the FedNow is just an infrastructure layer that allows connections to these new technologies. It's not like, oh, FedNow is replacing any of these new technologies. No, in fact, it's actually complementary for these new technologies to be tapped in and utilized. That's why when we look at banks using DLT to improve internal processes, or even Nelly Liang saying like, hey, FedNow, how does it work alongside these new technologies? Well, now we do know how. But what's even crazier about this is what she's addressing in this video clip. And then we go back to this, which is from April, the middle of April. Ripple and Stellar, Chainlink was there as well. There was a few other names, but for the most part, like Ripple and Stellar were the only two major players around payment technology, for an example, that were here with the U.S. Department of the Treasury. Ripple and Stellar at the roundtable discussion alongside Nelly Liang, Under Secretary for Domestic Finance, U.S. Department of the Treasury, Washington, D.C., April 23rd this year, discussion on the technical and regulatory requirements for upgrading the legacy capabilities of central bank money. You cannot make this up. Exploring the potential implications for consumers, investors, and businesses. They also delved into the long-term vision for the integration of CBDCs, tokenization, and stablecoins into the broader U.S. financial ecosystem, including potential benefits for economic growth and resilience. And here you have Nelly Liang, you have Lauren Beliv, head of public policy and government at Ripple, and then also Paul Wong over here from Stellar, director of product, CBDC, and institutional assets, Stellar Development. And this is crazy. Right? Like, this is actually insane. Like, when we think about these connections, when we think about the moves being made here, they are very, very important to focus on, because at the round table, at the head of the table, you have these big players, but who's sitting next to them? Oh yeah, that's right. You have Ripple and Stellar. It's insane. And then you look at what's going on here. You look at the play in progress. The play in progress is, how can we have these DLTs, these new technologies, plug and play with the FedNow service, which will ultimately service every single major bank, every single transaction, all these payments. And this is direct. This is direct mass adoption. Because once that's plug and played into pretty much everything, all of a sudden DLT, you don't even need to have these partnerships lined up. You don't even need to have anything happen. They're already tapped in. They're already going live. That's how these things work. That's how mass adoption works. And this is already in progress, in my opinion. But what's crazier about all of this is just the fact that Ripple has been at the forefront of this since day one. Ripple has been working on crypto regulations for years and years and years before it was even a big problem. So as we do look at like Ripple and XRP being a threat, they technically are. But the big thing to focus on here is just how embedded Ripple and even XRP are within the traditional system. They already infiltrated the traditional system years and years ago. The SEC lawsuit, it's all noise. It's all nonsense. We know that Ripple, at the end of the day, will win. There is no doubt about that in my opinion. So with that being said, I do hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, so notifications on for more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.